Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next part of the conference. It's certainly my honor and privilege to be able to introduce this evening's keynote speaker, Amy Vickers, who comes to us from just a little bit to the north in Massachusetts. Amy is an engineer by trade, and as many of you heard earlier today, she specializes in water conservation and water management issues. She earned her her graduate degree in engineering from Dartmouth College, and since that time she has held a number of very prestigious positions, and she's been a member of a number of different environmentally related boards. And as many of you probably already know, she heads what I think is a very exciting and innovative consulting practice. And this consulting practice is actively involved with government agencies at the federal level, the state level. They're involved in businesses and all the way down to the individual homeowner level, dealing with their management concerns and issues with water. Amy has written numerous professional papers and has been interviewed by countless different forms of media. And as some of you, I think, heard earlier, she's also an author of an award-winning book that I think she's probably best known for, and that's entitled The Handbook of Water Use and Conservation, Homes, Landscapes, Businesses, Industries, and Farms. And I think it's fair to say from the point of view of the organizing committee of the conference that it was the fact that she has such a broad expertise all the way from being able to help an individual homeowner to understanding very complex landscapes and watersheds. And that's one reason we're very happy to have Amy with us this evening. She's also been in her career very active in terms of legislation, and I think there was comment this morning or this afternoon about her involvement at the federal level, at the EPA level, with trying to put forth legislation to improve the efficiency of plumbing fixtures. And some of us have read that these changes will probably result in the savings of upwards to 9 billion gallons of water over the next few years. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to turn the podium over to Amy. The title of her presentation this evening is Water Use and Abuse, Innovations in Conservation. Amy.
Well, Peter, thank you. Thank you for that generous introduction. It is great to be here, and I want to thank everyone for showing up despite the rain. You know that water problems persist despite a few sprinkles. But anyway, just thank you again for coming. And in particular, I want to thank the school and Doug and the Goodwin-niering Center and everyone who worked to put this conference together. It's really great to be here. Well, I want to talk about the issues of water use and abuse within the larger context of how we're viewing and talking about water issues today, whether we're talking shortages, scarcity, water contamination, water pollution, etc. And it has been interesting to me. I've been working in the water field for over 20 years, maybe 21. Don't want to exaggerate. But it's very exciting to see how the issues that I and others have been working on for so many years are really getting out into the mainstream media. That we have a full audience here to really talk about and perhaps debate some of the issues. And so I'm going to dig right into it. And a lot has changed since I got involved in the water field, and a lot of good things have happened. We still have some problems that are going on, and we also have some new challenges. But what I'm finding as I survey sort of the landscape of water issues out in the world today, particularly in the United States, there are three core observations I keep making over and over again. And I'll list them for you. The first one is this: beware the water industrial complex. The second one is, despite all the advances we've had in water efficiency and ever louder warnings that we're facing scarcity, we have all these problems ahead of us, The fact is, in many ways, we're still mismanaging and abusing and overusing water like never before. So we have a lot of water conversation, but not enough water conservation. Thirdly, I feel strongly that if we start looking at the model of the small organic farming movement and the local food movement, using local resources and going back to organic farming and food distribution methods, start looking at these programs and these movements, that there's a lot we can learn if we want to really get serious about better managing our water, but also looking at having a much more water efficient and water conserving landscape in the future. I think it's critical we start looking closer at that, and I'm going to go into some of the details. First, I want to talk about what I call the water industrial complex. I have to say I've been spending some time recently on YouTube watching President Eisenhower talk about the military industrial complex. I've been quite interested in what he said in a short 15 minutes about what was happening to this country from the abuse of power by the military industrial complex. And I worry a lot what's happening in the water field, because what I'm seeing in part, despite all the wonderful activism that's going on, all the new professionals that are coming out into the field, that increasingly we're seeing these for-profit multinational companies and banking interests and private speculators getting into the water business. Everyone's talking about water being the new oil. These people are seeing it as the new blue gold. And I see it as a significant threat to what many of us have been talking about in terms of preservation of water. I see it as a threat to conservation in many ways. Increasingly, we're seeing these companies like Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, Carlyle, Barclays, HBSC Bank, etc., coming into the water game. And what are they doing? They're buying up water rights. They're putting millions, if not billions of dollars into supply-side alternative solutions like desalination and new water supply operations, instead of focusing on conservation and efficiency and fixing first what we have and getting that right. So that's one of my concerns. And if you look at what's happening with the speculation that's going on, it's really unnerving. A lot of the banks and the investment companies that have failed and have taken our retirement funds, have bankrupted too many people in this country, are now looking at water and making their investments there. But make no mistake about it, water shortages are real. We will need new infrastructure. There are places where desalination plants and new water supply operations, dams in some cases, and reservoirs are necessary. I don't want to say we don't need to develop new water resources. But at the same time, we've got to look at the energy and the environmental impacts from these new solutions that the private sector is offering, and ask some hard questions. How are we managing the water we have here now, and how far have we really come when it comes to water conservation? I want to talk about the high cost of supply-side solutions. It's something I think which some people may be forgetting. As we start having this notion of looming water shortages and water scarcity, I think getting exploited too much instead of really looking at what we have. Let's look at some of the costs involved, at some of the alternative supplies that are being proffered as solutions to the world's water shortages. Desalination plants, well, the costs really vary, but I think if you look at some actual case examples and projects, you'll see that the cost for desalination plants are sometimes as much as $10, $12, $15 million per million gallons of capacity. If you contrast that to development of freshwater sources, whether it's groundwater or surface water, you're looking at anywhere from $1 to maybe $4 million per million gallons of capacity. So desalination plants now, we're looking at 3, maybe 4 times the cost compared to freshwater systems. Reclaimed water systems for irrigation, prices vary anywhere from $2 to $6 million per MGD of capacity. So these costs vary, and we cannot forget that costs and money and who's going to pay for these new supply options is something we can never forget, particularly in the long term. When we look at desalination plants and the trend that we're seeing around here more and more, and I'll mention that Massachusetts has 2 desalination plants, which I believe were unnecessary, but again, we had private sector funding pushing these plants. They were very expensive. The one in Brockton cost $60 million for a 5 MGD plant. That's $12 million per million gallons of capacity. But there's another cost to desalination as well. We have the solid waste pollution that comes from it, the membranes, the spent materials that have to get disposed of somewhere. These are often getting dumped in marine environments, of course, because most desalination seawater plants are near the oceans, and we're killing marine life in the process. There's organic solvent waste associated with desalination as well. There was an interesting Desalination Committee study report in the 2005, I believe, the February issue of Journal AWWA, and they were talking about these many issues that desalination, in addition to the cost and the energy issues, we have these spent solvents that are highly corrosive and have organic solvents in them, and the states in the United States, the states in our country have not set up rules for how we're supposed to dispose of this waste. In some cases, these brines and these solvents are getting dumped in freshwater creeks and streams, which is a terrible irony because suppose we're running out of fresh water, we need desalination. Now we're taking the waste from the desalination and putting it into our freshwater streams. So there's this whole hidden issue that's now creeping up around desalination, and again, there's a lot of enthusiasm for it. You know, we've got tons of salt water. We don't have a water problem, but these are some of the issues that are underneath it all. And of course, I'm going to be advocating for water conservation. Dollar for dollar, investments we make in water conservation have proven time again that it's far more cost effective, environmentally friendly, it creates jobs, and does so much more. If you go around the country and you look at water conservation programs today, you'll see the cost at the most is about $1 million per million gallons of capacity that's created by reducing demand and forestalling the development of new supply-side options down the road. The Massachusetts Resource Authority, which serves more than 40 communities in Metro Boston, saved itself over $700 million by investing in water conservation. How did they do that? They fixed leaks. They did industrial audits. They did residential audits. We changed the plumbing code to be the first state in the country to require low-volume 6-liter toilets. The MWRA in the late 1980s was using about 330 million gallons of water a day from Metro Boston. I was out at the Quabbin Reservoir last week. They're at 205 million gallons a day demand. That is a 35% reduction in their total use. The population has stayed the same. So that shows you again the power of water conservation to reduce water shortages, save a tremendous amount of money, and also keep that system on a sustainable curve. I would also mention about the MWRA system that there's still a lot more they could do to save water if they wanted to. At this point, they have a surplus of capacity, and one of their issues is what should they do with it. And of course, all the towns that haven't conserved water are knocking on the door of the MWRA, and they want their supply. I don't think they should give it. I think they should be looking at stream restoration, but that's one of the issues we're looking at. But again, coming back to this cost issue, why is it that we have these examples of the MWRA? New York City has reduced their demand over 20%. Seattle's demand has stayed steady despite population growth. Why is it with these examples where we have proven the power of fixing leaks and reducing water wastage, we don't have more investment in them? And I think one of the reasons is again, we have this short-sighted old supply-side view. But the fact is also there are a lot of people who stand to gain money by developing these new options. If you look at the private interest coming into water, particularly the private water companies, remember that they make money from selling water, not by saving it. And that's the difference here, and that's why I feel strongly that water should be held in the public interest, and it should be owned by the public and not private water companies. I want to show you a couple of slides, and Glenn here is going to help me. We had a change. This is a great poster. It's over 80 years old. I was in the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, Massachusetts last year, and I was walking down the hallway and I saw this poster from the Hoover era. And what is it? Appears to me that they were talking about the link between water and energy use over 80 years ago, I think probably during the Depression. It's very interesting to me that during the Hoover administration, and even of course before, leakage was such an issue. We still have not solved this basic core issue of leakage. And as this poster, which is older than all of us in this room, says, there's a lot of energy embedded in that water that we're putting to leakage and to wasted steam, etc. And this is one of the things that we still need to tackle and that we can tackle. We know how to fix pipes. We can do it, but we haven't done it yet. And so this is a reminder that with all these new problems and these new fears, we still have the core challenge, fixing broken pipes. And by gosh, if we do it, we can make a huge difference. I mentioned again the MWRA, which includes Metropolitan Boston, reduced their demand by 35%. A lot of that was leakage out of Boston. At one time, the city of Boston was losing over 50% of its water supply to leakage. 50%. They're not alone. If you look at this chart, very interesting, look at the quote at the top. The winner of the 2006 Stockholm Prize made an interesting observation. He said that fixing leaks can avert the world's water woes. He's absolutely right. And again, this has been known for a long time. The only problem is we just don't do it. If you look at this chart, which I developed with Sandro Postel, it's a few years old, but it's just as good as it ever was. Unfortunately, the numbers are still true. Look at the United States. Look how much our water systems are leaking. I'll tell you that 10 to 30% estimate that we have in there is conservative. I have worked with water systems that cannot account for 40 to 50% of their water use. They don't want to advertise this fact, but in fact it's true. So again, we still have this core basic management problem, maintenance. If we would tackle maintenance, we would be in a very different water supply scenario today. Look at some of these other examples. Some of these countries are 40, 50%. I had an experience several years ago. I was in South Africa in Cape Town, and I was taking a tour of this large new area in which they were going to dam with the chief engineer. And I said, "My gosh, you're really going to, do a lot of environmental destruction here to build this dam and to get all this water here." I said, "Well, how much water are you losing to leakage and other losses?" This is a chief engineer. Well, number one, he didn't know the answer, but he did know that it was at least 50%. So what does that tell you again? It tells you that we don't have a handle on managing water. So even if we build new water supply and new treatment works, whether they're freshwater, desalination, or reclaim, if we follow past practice, we're still going to mess it up. And so what I'm saying is we've got to make this more of a priority. Now, there is some good news in here. Look at Copenhagen and Singapore and Fukuoka, Japan. I think we're looking at about 5%. We should have a national standard that water supply system leakage should be no more than 5%. If these systems can do it, why can't we? Why are we still talking about 10, 15, 20% as an acceptable amount of leakage? That is an old, ancient standard. It's as old as the Model T. And yet when you go to water industry gatherings, they'll talk about these goals as being reasonable, even though they still often haven't met them. But I made my point here. This core problem, this core issue of maintenance and cleaning up our water systems, we have not done. Very interesting book came out last year called Jevons Paradox, and I just discovered this gentleman, William Jevons. He was a British economist, and he made some interesting observations. He said, as technological advances boost the efficiency by which a resource is used, total consumption of that resource may increase and not decrease. And I thought, well, that's interesting because, in fact, if you look at total energy use, you look at per capita energy use and water, I see a lot of parallels to that. In fact, it's true. We have these new technologies which can make us use water and energy more efficiency, but we get more stuff. So our total demands are going up, and this is what we've got to really focus on. And I'm so interested in what Jevons said because it really hits at a bit of a schism that's happening in the water conservation and water efficiency movement. There's some disagreement about what we should call ourselves. We hear the terms water efficiency and water conservation, and to make things easy, I sometimes use them interchangeably. But in fact, the two terms are different. When you think about water efficiency, what you're saying is whatever this end use of water is, whether it's a drip irrigation system or a cooling tower, we're going to make that more efficient to use less water, and that's certainly a good thing. When we talk about water conservation, we're saying, yes, that would be a step to conserve and save water. But water conservation goes further, and it says that there are some uses that are not appropriate, and I would argue that particularly in the outdoor water use area is where excessive lawn irrigation is not an essential activity. But this is where actually one of the divides is happening because some people are saying, well, we have water efficiency on the landscape, we have these fine-tuned irrigation system, we're using these smart controllers based on evapotranspiration, everything is great, and we're saving water. And I say, well, you're saving water, but how much water are you still using? And case in point, the city of Las Vegas has an aggressive program to reduce turf water use, which is a wonderful program. They've made some great strides. They did a study where they looked at their single-family water use, and they found that it went from about 200,000 gallons of water a year for lawn watering. The average single-family home in Las Vegas went from about 220,000 gallons of water a year down to 100,000. They reduced their water use by 50%, and that's a good thing. But I'd say that's not enough, because that's water efficiency. You're fine-tuning your system, but you're still using a ridiculous amount of water in a desert that's dying because there's not enough water. So what's the point here? We need water conservation, not just water efficiency. Some examples of this. Well, here's a little sampler I have of residential single-family water use around the United States, which I think is interesting. Now, this is just single-family use. This is not sort of the whole town divided by population, which gives you a number which really doesn't mean anything. These are what people who live in single-family homes are using. And some of the numbers won't surprise you. Scottsdale, Arizona, about 200 gallons of water a day. Denver, 160 gallons of water a day. If you look at the national average indoor water use, it's about 60 to 65 gallons per capita per day now. So if you look at all these numbers and you take out 60 to 65 gallons per day, which is kind of the essential use you have in your home, brush your teeth, shower, washing, etc., the rest of it is really gravy. That's the numbers you see here are pools and lawns. And what's interesting in some of these cities, like Orlando, for example, they're using, you see 129 gallons a day there per person. So about half of their water, the potable use there, is for irrigation. But in fact, the number is higher than that, because in places like Florida, they also have reclaimed water available, which is not always metered, and private wells. I've done a lot of work in Central Florida, and it's quite common, frankly, to go up to a home and they have 3 sources of water. They have the potable water for the indoor use, which they may also use outdoors. They have their private well, which is unmetered, and they're taking God knows how much water. And then they have the reclaimed water, which at least in the metro Orlando area is not metered at all. So these numbers tell you a story. We're talking about shortages. We're looking at places like San Diego, which are doing toilet to tap, and been talking about desalination. Well, look how much water San Diego is using in the average home for outdoors. Again, take 60 gallons out of that, 65 gallons. On average, you've got 60 to 65 gallons for outdoor water use. That is a non-essential demand. If we're really serious about tackling these issues, we're going to have to cross that divide between the water we want and the water we really need. Now, if you go to the bottom here, you'll notice that I have HET irrigation free. Well, if you have a home that has high-efficient toilets, which is 1.3 gallons or less, a dual-flush toilet, you've got a high-efficiency washer, dishwasher, etc., and you don't water your lawn, you don't have a pool, you can easily be using 40 gallons per person per day or less, easily. I'll be a poster child here. I can tell you that that's what I'm doing. That's how much you really need, given the technology available today to do your business at home. Again, if you're not doing crazy things with outdoor watering. Very interesting, though, there's a study that's been going on, EPA looking at 9 cities. They're not all on here. 5 of the 9 cities are seeing increased use. So, again, there's this trend. Yes, we have this new technology, but overall our demand is going up. So, again, we're kind of getting back to that Jevons paradox situation that we have to tackle. I also want to mention that most of these cities have what we call an inclining or progressive conservation rate structure. The more water you use, the more you'll pay. So these people are getting that pricing signal, I believe, in most of these examples. Again, you use a lot of outdoor water use, you're going to pay for it. And one of the problems I have with people who sit in ivory towers, not colleges actually, whether it's think tanks or whatever, oh, the market's going to solve everything. Charge them the full, charge them a high price of water and they'll reduce their demand. We haven't seen that happen. What we've seen charging a very high price will have a short-term impact, and I'm all for progressive rate structures. But the fact is, most of the abusive outdoor water use is among the affluent, very often, and they don't care what you charge. I don't think being rich should give anyone the privilege of draining the public water supply, but frankly, that's what they're doing in too many places. I did a study in Dallas several years ago, and we looked at residential outdoor water use. The average home in Dallas, say 3 or 4 people, uses about 400 gallons of water a day, which is really about the national average, about 400 gallons a day. Well, then I started looking at the top users. I found that the top 10% of customers are using 35% of that city's water demand. The highest residential water user in the city of Dallas in 2005 used over 30,000 gallons of water a day. 30,000 gallons a day for this billionaire compared to the average 400 gallons a day per home. If you look at water use data, it can turn you into a water communist very quickly. But I think you're getting my point, is that we have this incredible discrepancy between what the average person is doing and these very affluent people. And so it's not that we're all doing, the wrong thing, but again, we have some people who are really abusing the system. The other thing that I've been saying is that as we start talking about these progressive rate structures, we start seeing more communities, or rather more particularly affluent individuals, going to private wells. And here in New England, that's a problem. Look at this picture. The state of Massachusetts, 79% of our assessed river basins have been found to be in medium to high stress, meaning that they suffer from low flows or other form of flow impairment. Look at that. We get over 40 inches of precipitation a year, and this is what we have done to our state. It's incredible. And what's amazing about all of this is that there's still, again, a lot of talk about water conservation. Some communities are starting to come up to the plate on it, but we have this problem. Now, why do we have essentially 80% of our river basins suffering from low flows? Well, the state doesn't really know the answer, and I'm not here to speak for the state. I can't do that. There's some theories. Some people think that one of the reasons why we're seeing this stream flow diminishment is that metropolitan Boston built a sewer treatment system that was too good. That instead of having local wastewater treatment systems that discharge the treated wastewater to aquifers and streams, we're now setting it out into Boston Harbor. Good intentions lead to what. So that's one of the theories. Although the reason I think that theory doesn't work is it's not just Metro Boston, the eastern part of the state. It's also now in central and part of western state. Here are the things that I think are going on. Number one, I think, again, we're starting to see more affluence, and we're seeing people who are using more water outdoors and doing it circumventing the system. So their metered water bill doesn't show that much water use. But in fact, again, we have this map to tell us. I spoke with the state and did some investigation into how many new private wells have been put in my state. Eastern Boston, which is sort of east of 495, kind of the third of the state on the right, between 2000 and 2005, more than 6,500 new private irrigation wells were installed. 6,500. Now, we know that when people don't have a meter on their water source, they're going to be using a lot of water. I think that's one of the reasons. Now, this has not been proven, but I think that's one of the smoking guns here. The other interesting thing that's going on in Massachusetts is that we have, it didn't all come out, but we have over 12 commercial water bottlers who are extracting water. Most of them are under 100,000 gallons of water a day reported, several over 100,000. But the fact is they're not metering how much water they're taking. And when they extract water for their commercial water bottles, it all leaves the state. So slowly but surely, even though individually each of these different sites is not extracting a tremendous amount of water, the cumulative impact, I think, is what we might be starting to see here. And again, I can't prove it. If you look at this map, and if you look at the green stars, those are where we have the 12 existing water extractors in the state of Massachusetts. Where you see the purple stars are where Nestle's Water North America is coming to Massachusetts, and there are at least 10 sites in which they want to extract our water and take it out of state. And some of us think that's a bad idea, and I'm one of them. And so what we have done is we've written a bill. It's called House Bill 778. It's only one page, and it says two things, really. It says we will have a 2-year moratorium on new and expanded extractions, because we want time for the state to finish its research, to assess how much water is being taken and what it's doing to these river basins. And we're also saying that we want to give time to local communities to develop ordinances and protections so that Nestle's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whomever, cannot just walk into their town and start extracting at will, which is what has been happening up in Maine. It's happening in McLeod, California, and a whole lot of other places. We think is wrong what these private bottlers are doing, and we also think it's very damaging to the environment, and we want to stop them. The other thing that we have in our bill is we're saying that if you're an existing commercial water bottler in a community for which there are voluntary or mandatory water restrictions, you must also be subject to restrictions. Why is it if you're in a town and you're one of these water short towns and you cannot water your lawn, you can't wash your car, but Nestle's or Coca-Cola can take as much water as they want. That is not fair. That is wrong. We think that that should change, and so we're hoping that our bill will pass. This is an example of what happens when you take too much water out of a river. This is one of the stress river basins. I think it's one of the highest stressed basins in Massachusetts, the Ipswich. I was just there the other day. In 2003, it earned the dubious distinction of being one of America's 10 most endangered rivers, according to American Rivers. But you see in the top picture, you see the Ipswich River in July, which is full. And then about a month and a half later, at the end of August, it is quite low. And it has been said that this is largely due to excessive lawn watering, which is going on in the Ipswich. And, you know, when I moved to Massachusetts more than 25 years ago, the whole issue of lawn watering in New England was really a non-issue. I mean, you talk to water managers and peak demands, 1, maybe 1.5, maybe 2. Well, now we're looking at 3 and 4 because new and often existing homes now have automatic irrigation sprinkler systems. People didn't used to water the way they do now. They don't even think about it. And so you get a new home today or you renovate your home, it's quite common to have these automatic irrigation systems. And I always like to say, you know, I'm not opposed to irrigation, guns, or SUVs. Just don't use them. That is the thing we need to keep in mind on automatic irrigation systems. I don't want to threaten the irrigation industry, you know, sell your product. Just don't turn it on, is what I say. And so this is what we want to start to tackle and what we've got to really address. Now, we all know the lawn issue is something which has been talked about before. Again, you look at the national trends data. I believe EPA now says that half of suburban and urban water use is for outdoor irrigation. It didn't used to be that high. And again, we've made great strides with high efficient appliances and fixtures, but we've got a lot to do in the outdoors. Now, this is an example of reclaimed water. This is a picture I took in Maui, Hawaii. I actually had a chance to work there last year. And I went out for what I like to call my windshield tour. You know, you don't want to sit in an office all day hearing about something. You want to get in the car and really see the people in the area. So we took a windshield tour in Maui, and they wanted to show me how good their reclaimed water system was. And I got an example literally in my face. I think the windows were down when I was taking this picture, but this is reclaimed water. And this is what you see, potable reclaimed. You see this a lot in Florida. There's this mindset that because it's reclaimed, we're reusing, we can waste. Again, this is the state of the art with landscape irrigation today. So again, if you're really frightened about we're running out of water, well, it's going down the drain. If you're fast enough to chase it, there it is. It's yours. You can have it. So again, we still have these problems to solve. I'll make another point about reclaimed water. I have reservations about reclaimed water in terms of public health and environmental issues. And everyone says, oh, no, reclaimed water, it's safe. You know, we've got these standards, etc. Well, there's a little story in the news recently that some researchers at Colorado State just got some money. They're going to study the public health effects of gray water. So here we have California, we have Arizona, all the people getting into gray water, you know, reuse your indoor water. And I'm all for reuse, absolutely. But I am concerned that the standards we have and the health issues have not been addressed. Many people have heard about pharmaceuticals in drinking water. Well, imagine the stuff coming out of your drain pipes and the concentrations we're looking at. And so, again, we're spraying all this stuff, some of which, you know, are volatilizing in the ambient environment, and we will find out what the consequences are. I don't think reclaimed water is as safe as we've been led to believe. I actually think it's a fantastic technology, particularly in the industrial and the commercial sector, but I think we need to look more closely at what are the public health impacts of using this not completely clean water in the environment. The other challenge we're facing in terms of excessive use, and for which I don't know a lot of solutions, home water features. People aren't content with just lawn watering in pools anymore. No, they want their own pond, they want their own waterfall, they want a fish farm in their backyard. And, you know, the numbers on this, again, you know, we're seeing a doubling, a quadrupling from year to year in the number of sales of these just myriad different types of products. Some of them are very innocuous. They're just little pedestals with water flowing and often recirculating. Some of them are using thousands of gallons of water a day. Now, when you talk to these vendors, they say, well, hold off. We've got a recirculation system in here. Well, You've got a recirculation system. You're using this thing. It's hot and it's dry. You're going to have high evaporative losses, easily 20, 30, maybe 40%, really depending upon where you are. It could be very high if you're in Arizona, not a lot in Maine. But the fact is we're putting these things in, and there's millions of them going on. I mean, if you look at Gardener Supply or different catalogs, or you go to landscape outlets today, you will see these products here. And the sad thing is a lot of them go belly up. I saw some article about this in a real estate publication. They were saying most of these things are dead after 3 or 4 years. Of course, the fish are dead in there too. But they're hooked up. And it's one more opportunity for water to leak. You have the water connected to this thing. You've forgotten about it. It's cheap plastic piping, but water could be leaking from it. So you get the idea that's a problem. So if you're not content enough with excessive lawn watering and pools and fountains, well, in the wintertime there's something for you too, because there are now kits where you can have your own hockey rink or ice skating rink. And this sounds far out, but I'm embarrassed to say that I went for a walk not far from where I live about a year ago, and it was January. And I don't want to say it was a neighbor, but someone who lives near me, they had a private ice rink they had set up in their front yard. I don't know how much water, but a lot of water was used. So again, we have these products coming out. We don't have good data on how much they're being used or how much water. I think this is part of what's behind these crazy numbers we're seeing in increased use. There's one more. You can have your own snow mountain. Yes, you can. There are kits you can buy. In fact, there was an article in the home section of the New York Times sometime last year, snowmaking kits. This guy took the day off to hang out with his kids and to make snow for about 8 hours. I can't remember. I did some calculation on the thing. I think I figured like 1,100 gallons or something crazy. Of course, it's all melted. Challenges ahead. So again, this is the mentality of some Americans here. This is what we are up against. So we, there's a great line by Frances Moore Lepan. If you ever read the book Diet for a Small Planet, she's doing great things with Small Planet Institute. But she has this line. She says, we are creating scarcity. We are creating what we fear. So this is the challenge. And if we ignore all this and we say, well, we've got all these big problems, then we're pretending. We're pretending not to know. We need a radical new rethinking and a redoing of how we allow water use in the landscape. In the water conservation community and the drinking water community, for years we've been talking about you must use water wisely outdoors. We need an overhaul of that whole concept and the whole messaging and the set of rules we have in place about that. And I do think we need rules. Because if we don't set the standard on how much water you can or cannot use outdoors, and the irrigation industry is doing it for us. So we do have rules, but they're not ours. This is my conceptual view of where we need to go. If you look at, how water is being used, we've got the worst of the tens. Then you start getting into best management practices like they have out in California or, Florida. It sort of gets you in a better place, but it doesn't really solve the problem. There's a lot of pretty please and voluntarism, which really doesn't do anything. The green building LEED standards, I think they're a disappointment. They really don't say a lot about outdoor water use, and the new 2009 standards, I think, are still lacking. But really what I think we need to go for, where we have water shortages, where we have stream depletion, we've got to say you can only water when it rains. And once you've established plants, which does take some supplemental irrigation, then I think we need to say, look, we need to really, really rein this in, or else. Because if we don't, we're going to pay a high price for it. And here's an example where it makes a difference. The town of Franklin, Massachusetts, a couple of years ago, was watching its local pond dry up, Kingsbury Pond. It went from 26 to 10 acres. And of course the town said, well, we're running out of water. They went to the state, they said, increase our permit, we need more water, the sky's falling, this is terrible. And the state of Massachusetts did a good thing. They said, no, you're not getting more water. And in fact, we're going to make sure, we're going to require that you meet our goal of a maximum of 65 gallons per capita per day. So they did some water conservation. And what's the primary thing they did? They said, you can only water 1 day a week. And look at what it did. It has restored this pond. The town meets the 65 GPCD goal. And their most recent demands, I know of 2007 water demands, were the same as they were in 2001, despite the fact that they've grown by 5,000 people. And again, I make this point, whether it's Franklin or Metro Boston or your town or my town or any city, at least in America and in much of the world, there's so much more we could do to reduce demand. So again, this is where we've really got to start focusing more and more. I don't want to go there yet. This is why I'm really proposing, again, I want to go back to what I was saying earlier. If you look at the organic farming movement and the principles that they're following, whether it's no for the Northeast Organic Farmers Association, whatever, what are they talking about? They're talking about emphasizing native and adaptive plants. We should do the same thing for our trees, our shrubs, our grasses. One of the ways we can knock out this is excessive and this supplementary irrigation to say, look, if you want to have a manicured landscape, then the way you're going to do it is you're going to only use natives. And if you don't like that, you can do what you want, but the water's not available to use on an unlimited basis. One of the other benefits of promoting organic land care, again, and I'm talking suburban lawns and landscape, if you look at the data on organic soil compared to our conventional soil, much higher soil moisture retention, anywhere from about 15 to sometimes 30%. One of the problems we have in this country is excessive pesticide use. The amount of chemicals that go onto a lawn compared to agricultural land is 3 to 10 times as much more on a lawn. Organic farming, of course, and organic lawn care emphasize chemical-free, using local leaf compost, compost tea, etc. Of course, the energy savings are there. All the energy that goes into fertilizers and pesticides and mowing, the mow blow and go guys who come in and manage these landscapes, it's all a big waste. We've got to really tackle this. We've got to be aggressive about it if we're really going to start talking about having not just sustainable. We don't want to sustain what we have. What we have is not good. We need to go above sustainability, and we need to talk about thrivability. Why do we want to just keep what we have? We've got to talk about having an environment and water systems that are robust, that are abundant, that are clean, that don't require these crazy amounts of treatments and these outlandish costs to take contaminants out of our water that should never have been put there in the first place. We've got to start looking at how to emphasize that. And there are some good models. And there's a wonderful subdivision north of Chicago called Prairie Crossing. In fact, I think PBS has or is going to be doing a story on them. It's a subdivision, developer built it, but what's unusual about it is about 400 homes. Only 2 of those homes have irrigation systems. They don't use them very often. Basically don't irrigate. It's a planned community, and the only areas where they irrigate are some common areas where kids play soccer, people hang out, and picnics, etc. They have an organic farm, which of course is primarily drip and micro irrigation. They have a community pond, which can be a pond because they're not taking all the water for irrigation, so there's actually water in it. And there's an emphasis on community and connection and people coming together. So instead of people having their private kingdoms and their bright green lawns, they're coming together as a community, and they're really focusing on what matters, which is people and community and a clean and safe and healthy environment. What's interesting at Prairie Crossing, of course, they have set aside land for an organic farm, and there in the top picture you see the farm store they have there. It's very nice. I've been there. But what Prairie Crossing is doing is what we're starting to see happening in developing countries and a little bit here in the U.S. is we're saying that the landscape should not just be for beauty alone. What nature created is absolutely gorgeous. But we've got to stop looking at our front yards and our backyards and these little plots in cities, etc., as just for our own private ego. We've really got to be looking at land as productive, as contributing or as inhibiting the environment, and as a place to grow food. And I think one of the benefits we're seeing from the financial crisis is people are, the number of seed sales have gone up like 20 and 30% since the crash. And but anyway, cities like Shanghai and Havana, very interesting. These are highly congested cities. More than 50% of their produce and fruits and veggies are coming from these small plots, etc. The water savings benefit here, again, it's organic, so you're not using synthetics. But where we have small-scale farms, we have often micro and spray irrigation, micro spray and drip irrigation, as contrasted with gravity and high sprinkler irrigation. So again, local, saving food miles, saving energy miles, saving water miles. That's the way to go. There's a very good film on what Havana did. It's a little bit of propaganda in there, but you know, we all have it. It's called The Power of Community: How Cuba Survived Peak Oil, and I highly recommend it. I live in Amherst and we have it at our public library, but I know that we're different. I was very thrilled when Michelle Obama announced a week or so ago that she was doing this White House organic, garden. I thought, more power to you. She's ripping out lawn, and she's getting these kids involved, and she's putting in some organic produce. And of course, this is builds health, builds community. But again, the savings are there. You know, if you compare, a little tiny patch of land for organic produce and how much water you use compared to lawn, I mean, you're saving at least 75%. I mean, you can hand water a lot of produce. The person in charge of the little farm on the White House lawn said they were spending about $200 for the seeds and the compost and such. Contrast that to how much the average American homeowner spends on their lawn in a year, often well over $1,000. If they've got a conventional lawn, if they're putting chemicals, water the whole bit, well over $1,000. So again, there's this cost benefit here as well. So this is one of the things that I think we need to really focus on. I just want to close with some final thoughts, and I just wanted to again sort of just reemphasize that in my mind there are 5 key things we need to be doing if we really want to talk about having thriving water systems and getting rid of that term water scarcity and looming water shortages and using fear to drive our decisions. Again, we've got to tackle this problem of leakage. It is the #1 problem, at least in this country and throughout much of the world, particularly the developing world, which has some of the scarcest resources. We should have a maximum allowable leakage of 5%. Why would we allow anything higher than that? Particularly when we have cities around the world that have demonstrated they can reduce demand waste to that level. We need to have mandatory local, if not statewide, landscape irrigation restrictions. The state of Florida is now starting to do this because their drought has been so bad, and they see the growth they've had and the problems they have. They see that reclaimed water for irrigation has not solved their problems. In many ways, it may have aggravated. I think in some ways, reclaimed water is kind of like building new highways. The more you give, the more they'll take. Another solution is start talking about limiting the area allowed for irrigation and landscapes. And again, half of urban water use in this country is for lawn and landscape irrigation. The Lower Colorado River Authority in Texas has done an interesting initiative. They have put that on new hookups to their system. They often will put deed restrictions, and they're saying you cannot irrigate more than 2.5 times the footprint area of your home. So if you're Ross Perot and you're one of the highest water users in Dallas, which he is, you cannot irrigate every acre. I don't care how big your mansion is. You can only irrigate 2.5 times the area of your mansion, Ross. Rich or poor, that's all you get. Again, we've got to embrace the organic farm movement and their principles and bring it to land care. This is a huge industry. It greatly affects our water supply and our water quality. There are tremendous benefits for personal health, reducing energy use, our carbon footprint, on and on. The figures are there. We've got to do it. And lastly, again, we have to really, I believe, focus more aggressively on protecting local sources from depletion by these commercial water bottlers. And I'm a strong proponent that we've got to stop these depletions. We should only allow extractions of water out of a river basin if it can be proven by science that there's enough water and we can afford to sell it and that it's a good deal for the community. So in closing, my conclusion is that the world is not running out of water, but it is time that we call a halt in the race to abuse, mismanage, and exploit every drop that we have. We've got to work at reframing our limiting ideas about water security. Don't always listen to what the bankers and the Wall Street and the World Water Forum people are telling you. But we've got to define what are our water needs versus our water wants and make some hard decisions about that. In closing, we can reclaim and know, again, Earth's natural water abundance and health. But to do so, we're going to have to take actions which demonstrate that water conservation is not just a personal virtue. Water conservation is a civic necessity. Thank you.